Today I am with Ellie, as always,
Hello.
and we are both ADHD coaches. And Ellie, would you like to say something about what we're doing?
We are talking about how small talk can be difficult for people that are ADHD and neurodivergent. It's something that we do have to think about, and this is not necessarily true for people that are neurotypical. And in this conversation, we hope to kind of explain why we have some difficulties with it.
Yeah, I think it's important to highlight that as neurodivergent people, we have sensory sensitivity, social processing differences. So, do you experience that, Elise? Do you experience that yourself?
Yeah, it's hard for me to when someone asks me how I'm doing. I have no idea how to respond because I think, do you mean how I'm doing in general? Do you mean, and then it takes me a while to think about it. And then I don't want to lie and say like a one word answer without thinking about it. So I kind of sometimes I just stand there for a moment looking confused, and then the other person's confused, which
Yeah.
isn't the best introduction always.
Yeah, it's also worth mentioning that we are both based in different countries,
Yeah.
and in the United States where you are, it's it's very important part of the culture, the small talk.
Oh, yeah.
While in Poland, it's a little bit easier because usually for the question, "How are you?" we can respond, "It's terrible," or "I can't be bothered doing anything today," and it's socially acceptable. So you don't have to sort of put on this mask to say, "Yeah, I'm great, I'm fine. How are you?" and start the small talk.
Oh, yeah. I feel like for me, like before I go to the house, I'm like, I'm gonna see people and they're gonna wave at me and I'm not gonna know them and they'll be like, oh, how are you doing? And it's like I mentally prepare for that before I like leave,
Mm,
because it is such an important part of our culture. And I remember
yeah.
when I was in college, like I'd be walking around campus and I was in a sorority and my sorority sisters would be like, sometimes you look like you're so angry and stomping around campus. Or like they'd be like, I tried to say hi to you, but you didn't see me. And I'd be like, that's because I'm focused on getting to class. I'm not trying to make conversations with people.
Yeah. Mm,
Um, or I would seem cold because people would, yeah, want to make small talk with me. And I'd be like, I don't really, yeah, I don't really know how this goes, or I'd go too deep too soon. And then they'd be like, oh, like, you're kind of weird.
yeah, which
Um,
is also a problem for ADHDers that we can overshare very often.
yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
but I think you mentioned an important thing that you sort of talked about your education setting or
yeah.
university setting, and we cannot deny the fact that small talk is important for professional settings, for social bondings, for education. So I wanted to highlight that as neurodivergent people, we have this sensory overload very often, and especially small talk in a place which is busy in a loud environment can be overstimulating. Yeah. Do you think there are other challenges we can encounter during small talk?
I feel like with small talk, it's hard because it's almost like you're expected to, for me, and I feel like sometimes with I have autism and ADHD, like I take things very literally, and it feels like in small talk you're almost expected to kind of like it feels fake and like you're kind of
Mm,
lying, and it
yeah,
feels disingenuine to me, and I just like don't see the point of it.
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like this mm, implied meanings that we have difficulties with.
Yet it feels like um I don't know, I'm going back to college so much, but I went through sorority recruitment and that is hell. It's hell for people that hate small talk because it's all about meeting people and them asking you like, "Oh, what did you do?" And you know that they're not really like I feel during small talk people aren't really paying attention to like they're seeing if you it's almost like a secret code and they're like,
Yeah,
they're not judging your answers. They're really just studying you overall. And
exactly.
like it just feels like a test that I fail, and
Yeah.
I don't like it.
Yeah, of course. And
Yeah.
I think what you said is really beautiful. And what I love about being neurodivergent as well is that we value, or we can not even not only value, but we sort of cannot operate in different way rather than being 100% honest. It of course it doesn't apply to everyone and every situation, but in such social interactions with autism and ADHD, it's it's a challenge to put on this mask, as we said.
Yeah.
I also think that the processing delay can play some part in these difficulties, as we may need extra time to respond or interpret what the other person is implying.
Yeah.
So I think it's worth mentioning. And also there is social anxiety, which really often goes hand in hand with ADHD, and fatigue. So we can feel exhausted and or intimidated. And I feel like what's important is to acknowledge that and accept that in yourself and take care of yourself. Do you have some ideas on self-care during small talk?
I feel like self-care is kind of knowing your limits and like not, I remember with friends, I would be like, hey, I'm not the kind of person that likes to go to the club. I don't like
Mm.
loud parties, but like if you want, we can go to lunch or we can take a hike
Mm.
or like go. I feel like for me, like socializing in open areas where I'm comfortable
Yeah.
really helps. And then like also having some idea of what we're doing and like a plan. Um, so I don't, if you take me to a party with like 50 people I don't know and I have to make small talk with them, like if before we go like, hey, this is, giving me some background of like what is expected from me, but
Mm.
also like not being afraid to have people think maybe I've gotten used to feeling like people might think I'm a little bit odd in that like maybe I seem a little bit more quiet or like my small talk might not match up with theirs, but you do meet people that kind of are at your energy level and they're like, "Oh, I also don't like small talk." So I think it's also accepting that like it's really hard to go around your whole life acting and we do have to do a little bit of small talk, but realizing that some people may not get me, but I shouldn't continue to force myself into
Yeah.
those situations all the time, even though sometimes for work they're required.
Yeah. And also as ADHD coaches, we are aware, and ADHDers ourselves,
Yeah.
we are aware how important it is to not let even if the perception of you is you are odd or something like that, to not let it affect your personal image of yourself,
Yeah.
and your truth that you hold of yourself. Yeah, so I really loved what you said regarding this. And I wanted also to say that it's also there might be some tips when you are in the small talk situation, for example, in this professional setting. I think what would be a good advice is to, as you said, don't force yourself into anything, but also when you have to do this, maybe prepare some go-to topics, like,
Yeah.
I don't know what we could suggest.
In
Uh,
America, it's always the weather, and I always just like go to the weather because I'm like, okay, it's outside. Like,
yeah,
that's one of mine.
or some interests, shared interests, or current events in the world. If somebody is into that, I would never touch this topic with anyone, but maybe somebody is willing to. And also, I think it's good to focus. What worked for me is good that I focus on listening to the other person rather than overthinking in my mind what I'm gonna respond.
Yeah.
And then even if you seem odd or anything, you can be sure that you showed your interest to the other person. And I think in many situations that's enough.
Yeah. I mean, I've been told I'm a great conversationalist by some and a bad one by others. And I'm like, it's really a range. And some people kind of appreciate, like, hey, this person talks about different things and they communicate differently, but I like the difference of that.
Yeah. I also think it's important to set boundaries for small
Yeah.
talk. When you overstimulate it, just don't push yourself, just as you said before. Just
I
excuse and say politely that, sorry, I have to go to the toilet, for example.
yeah. And this is kind of like throwing this in there, but especially as women, we tend to be more vulnerable, autistic and ADHD women, vulnerable to harassment and like being in situations that could be dangerous. And I, for some reason, whenever I'm in the airport, like always, like men, nowhere else, just the airport, will come and try to make small talk with me. And I remember one time this creepy guy on the plane was like, "Oh, you're from Colorado? Like, where are you in Colorado?" And then like I went through and I was like, "Okay, it's small talk." And he's like, "Oh, what's your address?" And I was like, and I didn't realize I was like giving him my location. So like I was just so wanting to, yeah, and it's
To
happened a few
fit
other
in.
times where I wanted to be polite, but then gave away too much information.
Yeah.
So be
Yes.
careful of that as well.
Yeah, it's very important, I think, that we tend to try to fit in so much that sometimes we can
Yeah.
lose the sense of what's safe for us or what's good for
Yeah.
us.
I didn't realize I was so focused on trying to be normal, like I didn't realize
Mm.
that he was creepy.
I think that's a whole topic on which we can expand in future videos regarding
Yeah.
masking and this feeling like a jigsaw from the other box
Yeah.
sometimes. Okay, let's not make it too much longer. Is there anything vital that you would like to add, Elise, regarding small talk and neurodiversity?
Well, as someone that's really like thought about it, I think just do your best and be yourself. And like, as long as you do your best and you're trying to be a genuine person, it doesn't matter what people think.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I'm gonna make a tattoo out of out of this saying. But we encourage our listeners to share experiences or questions on small talk and neurodiversity or your challenges in the comments on LinkedIn or YouTube, wherever you're watching us. And also, we would like to invite you to join if you're an ADHD creative or neurodiverse creative, join our group. What is this group, Alice? You can say more.
Oh, well, ADHD Creatives is a group of artists from all over, and we want to support other artists in completing their projects and help them create a community. It is free. And in the group, you will learn more about how to work with your brain and receive coaching and guidance on how to approach your work in a way that I was going to say works for you, but that doesn't work. But yeah, in a way that is not overwhelming, because a lot of times it can be very difficult to do projects, and we're not really taught in school how to break down projects in a way that works for us. That was a little bit of a word jumble, but I think everyone gets what I'm saying.
Yeah, of course. I will post a link to our website regarding this group in the description of this video, and you can email us or sign up through the website, and we will start again in January. We already had one meeting, but the next one will be in Jan. So see you there, and thank you so much, Elise.